Hello, I'm Ron McNeely, a Federal Solutions Engineer here at Labelbox. For today's presentation, I'll be doing a deeper dive for working with geospatial imagery in the Labelbox platform. We'll cover the types of images that are supported, how to create data sets with various settings, uploading data sets to Labelbox, and walk through creating of geospatial projects. We'll wrap up with some common troubleshooting and conversion processes that should be very helpful when working with geospatial data. There are generally about 6 steps for creating your projects in Labelbox. The first step is to ensure that your images are of a supported type. We currently support GeoTIFFs, Cloud Optimized GeoTIFFs, and NITIFF images. Our Map Tiler interface uses Cloud Optimized GeoTIFFs, so if your images are already Cloud Optimized GeoTIFFs or COGs, they will be ready immediately to use in a project. If you're uploading GeoTIFFs or NITIFF images, we will first do a check to see if they're COG. If they're not a COG, then we will process them into a COG or convert them on the Labelbox server. This process can take about 20 minutes, depending on the file size. Once you've verified the images are compatible, you will upload your images to your cloud storage provider. You will use the URLs from the images on your provider to create your JSON data file. Once the data file is created, you'll upload the JSON data file into Labelbox. Once this is done, the Labelbox server will then check your images and verify if they are a cloud optimized GeoTIFF or if they are not. If they are not, again, we will start the process to convert them to a COG. Monitor your data sets in Labelbox. Once the icon changes to a geospatial tiled with a globe, this means that the conversion or the COG image is ready for use in a project. If you see unsupported type, this means there is an error in the image you're trying to use, and we'll cover some troubleshooting steps later to help identify what might cause that. If you see a JSON icon, that just means that your image is still processing or still doing the conversion process on the Labelbox server. So give it about 15 to 20 minutes, refresh your datasets page, and you should have the geospatial tiled icon at this point. And the last step is create projects and attach them to your dataset. Next, we'll cover validating your data before you import into Labelbox. And then I'll cover creating various types of data sets with various types of layers and imagery, loading them into Labelbox, and showing you projects of how they'll look. So for today, I'll be working with 2 different images. So I have a NITIFF image that is a non-cloud optimized GeoTIFF, and I'll also be working with a GeoTIFF that I have manually converted to a cloud optimized GeoTIFF. First 2 things when you're creating a project. If you're working with a cloud optimized GeoTIFF and you want to verify that it is valid, there is a validation plugin called RioCogGeo that you can run. And it'll check your COG and let you know if it is a valid cloud optimized GeoTIFF. If you're working with non-COG, so just a GeoTIFF or a NITIFF, and you just want to verify that it does meet the requirements for Labelbox, you can do a GDAL info and run this on a non-COG. And this will return some information. The first thing you want to look for really is just to verify that it is a geo projection. You want to verify that it is a valid EPSG, and then verify that your bands, and I'll cover the bands later in this video in the troubleshooting section. That's really all you need to do to get started. So we'll move over to our data sets. The first data set I want to show you is just a simple data set, no layers, it's just a single image. So only thing you need in your JSON is the tile layer URL and the URL of your image. To find this, if you go to wherever you have the images stored, so for me, I have mine in an S3 bucket, I can go to the image and you'll see the object URL. All you need to do is copy that and paste that into your JSON file. And that's a single JSON file for one image. in Labelbox what that looks like. So it's just a single image, no layers. Once I label this very large image and submit it, then I'll be finished. There are no additional images or layers loaded. The next use case, so this is the same image, but I've also layered a second image. So I have a sensor that has different types of data in it, or I have another sensor that's capturing data. This example, it's a capturing methane from an area. If I go look at this, so when I load this into Labelbox, so again, I have my NITF image, but you'll see at the top right now, I have alternative tile layers button. I can click on that, and there's my methane layer that I just loaded. And you can see that now I have this image, so I can jump back and forth and see the various images in my data set. So that's an alternative tile layer in a data set. My next one is just, again, a simple cog. So I'm pointing to just a cog. So just a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, nothing else. So I have the full image that can be layered by a single individual. Another instance of my cloud optimized GeoTIFF, but I'm using an open source Mapbox to generate additional layers where I can validate from another image source. So if you were on an on-prem and you had maybe Esri map server internally or something else, you could use these. Otherwise, you could use a publicly available map server. When you load these, so this will give you, again, your image. If I go to my layers drop down, so there's the satellite, so there's the Mapbox layer 1, and there's the Mapbox layer 2. So additional map servers, and these are great for verifying, especially if you have a darker image, or maybe a NITF or a SAR or something like that you want to be able to see, to make sure that, number one, your map lines up, your image lines up with the base map. You can add them for that, and just to verify other obstacles or other objects when they're otherwise dark in another environment. And one other option, so this is that same image, but obviously this image is very large, so you don't really want to distribute a single image to a single person to have them label this whole thing. Especially imagine if you're labeling rooftops or roads or something. There's a lot of data to be labeled. So we give you the capability to slice these out or chip them out. And what it looks like in a JSON is you just have, it's the same URL, so the same Mexico City cog for every instance, but I'm just generating some bounds. So I've done this with a quick script that we can share. So I'm just going to do an overlay in QGIS to set the bounds to generate the bounds of the shape that I want. A quick script that's going to create this full JSON for you. And what this does, when you now add this to a project, instead of having this very large image, you're going to have individual areas. So now each slice of this will be distributed to multiple people, and you decide on the size of this, how big you want it to be. And this, so you can have an entire workforce that are now labeling all the different slices or chips of this image. I can move on. So I can only label inside of my box. So I can go create my label and then submit, and then it'll generate the next one for me. So I can start labeling. So really handy if you have very large images that you want a lot of people to work on. You can use this type of a data set, and we're more than happy to share our script with you and help you get, figure this out and get this configured. It's really easy. And the last one that I'm not going to show you, but this is just if you have a lot of geospatial images that you want to load into a single data set, then you just add them as all individual tile layers separated by a comma in your JSON. Okay, so once you have your data sets created, the next step is to upload them into Labelbox. So if I go back to Labelbox and go to my data sets, this is where I will create my data sets. So I've already created these. I'll show you with one, just upload one, what it looks like. So this, I'll do a NITF. So remember, a NITF image has to process or can be converted to a cog on the server. So it'll take about 20 minutes to do. So if I click on my JSON, so I've created my JSON, uploaded the JSON file to Labelbox as a data set, and you'll see now that it has this JSON icon. This means that it hasn't extracted the metadata, it hasn't converted the image yet, so it's not ready to render this in a project. If you refresh, you can check, it still has not updated. So it's a NITF image. It's going to take a little bit to process. If I go into my image, what you want to look for is media attributes. If the image has processed, you will see the metadata, so the EPSG values, the zoom levels, and such. You'll see that populated in the media attributes field. If I go look at one that has completed, so I did these yesterday, so you can see that I have the geospatial tiled icon. That means that it's processed. I can go in this and verify it. So you can see now it's extracted that metadata, so the EPSG value and the zoom levels from the metadata of my image. So these are ready to go. If you see this, you'll know that it is not finished processing and not available. Now we'll take our data sets that we've uploaded, we'll check that they have completed processing, and then we'll create a project. So to check on the status of my data sets, just go into the Datasets tab, and the previous data set that I've uploaded, you need to refresh this page, and you can see now it has updated that it is geospatial tiled. So this means that it's processed and it's ready to be used in a project. I can click on it and again check the media attributes, and we're good to go. Okay, so what I'll do now is go ahead and create a project. So in Labelbox, I'm going to click on the New Project button, give it a name. Click on the Next button. I'm going to choose my data that I just uploaded. Click Next. Select my editor. Once I've created my ontology, added my instructions and my nested classifications and image classifications, click Save. On the next page, I will click Next. I can configure my quality tools, whether benchmarks or consensus and review is necessary, and click Finish. My project is now created. Next step I would usually do is go into Settings, go to Members, and add associate members for the different roles that I want in my project. And then you're complete with adding your project. You can go to Start Labeling and start labeling from there.
Now we'll wrap up the presentation with troubleshooting and image conversion steps. If you are creating data sets, uploading them to Labelbox, and you're having issues that the image is not processing properly, some things to look at. So if you're using NITF image, they must be NITF 2.0 or NITF 2.1 formats. Coordinate systems must be EPSG 3857, 3395, or EPSG 4326. If you are using a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, it must be a valid COG. And just for informational items, but item D, if you have GeoTIFFs and NITFs that are very large, over 1 gigabyte, it may work better if you convert them to a COG before uploading them to your bucket and uploading that JSON into Labelbox. And I'll go through some various steps to test and convert, and I'll show these also in Terminal. So I showed already how to verify that a COG is valid. You're just going to run rio cogeo validate and then your file name, and this will just return whether or not it is a valid GeoTIFF. if you want to verify that an image is compatible, so using GDAL, so GDAL info and then your file name. So things to look for are the projection. It must be a geo projection. Your EPSG must be 3857, 3395, 4326. Make sure that the corner coordinates appear valid for the image, and then check your bands. So if you have a grayscale image such as a NITF or a SAR, the band will be gray. If you have an image that's a GeoTIFF or a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, then you should have multiple bands. Generally, band 1, 2, 3 would be red, green, and blue, and then potentially a fourth band for alpha. If you want to convert a GFTIFF to a COG, you can use GDAL translate. This is the syntax for that. So it's GDAL translate, the file name, -OFCOG, and then your output file name, and this will convert that image to a cloud optimized GeoTIFF. The last one, if you're having an issue with images that aren't the correct EPSG or other issues possibly related to alpha bands and such, you can try this GDL warp command. This will reproject it and convert it and add an alpha band to your image. Okay, moving over to a terminal, we'll take a look at some of the different options. The first one I discussed, and I'll show you again, just to verify that a cloud optimized GeoTIFF is a valid COG. Just run the Rio Cogeo validate and your COG name, and that will return whether or not it is a valid cloud optimized GeoTIFF. Anytime you're having an issue with a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, this is the first thing you want to check. Make sure that it is valid. The next one to run would be GDAL info for a non-COG. So we'll run this one first on a NITF image. Show you what this looks like. So if you scroll to the top, you want to first check the projection. So make sure that it is a geo projection. Make sure that you do have the correct and supported EPSG value. Then scroll to the bottom and take a look at your bands. So this is a NITF, so it's a grayscale image. So I only have one band and it's gray. If I wanted to check this for an image that is just a GeoTIFF, so again, I can see that it is the right projection. My EPSG is correct, and if I scroll to the bottom, here as you'll see I have my coordinates, but now I have three bands. So I have band 1 is red, band 2 is green, and band 3 is blue. So these are all things that you should check when you're having issues with images. If you need to convert a GeoTIFF to a COG, we're going to use GDAL translate. And give it an output name. And just run this, and it'll process and create this image for you. This takes a few minutes, but I'll wrap it up at this point. So hopefully this has been a good presentation to help you understand the different processes for using and working with geospatial imagery in the Labelbox platform. Again, my name is Ron McNeely with the Federal team here at Labelbox. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to help.